Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We're back with some culture content. Before I introduce the topic, here's a quote just for this episode. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Aristotle. I picked Aristotle because our topic today is Google's psychological safety. It's apparently this Aristotle program where actually uh, there were five components to this Aristotle program at Google around psychological safety, encompassing well, of course, psychological safety, dependability, um, um, clarity around goal, role, execution, meaning, impact. I want to break down these and what where this potential phenomenon of psychological safety, if you've not heard the term, it's been introduced to me recently by those that I know in the corporate space, and I think it's come about in the last at least few years, to my knowledge, and many of these these ideas and these terms that we hear in the current whatever the epoch of our times, our current generation, are old ideas shared in a new way. But I want to talk about psychological safety, this idea of dependability. And so, psychological safety is this idea that as a team member, I feel safe to speak my mind, to voice my opinions, to share my value without repercussion. Uh, now, what would be the value of that in a team setting? Well, if I'm if I'm a member of a team and I don't say what I think about a given situation, it might be the information that I have, that only I have based on my experience, based on my education, based on my intuition, based on just me as a human. That could actually be like I'm the linchpin, I'm the missing link. You know, for whether it's me or you or whoever in that team, one person could actually have the answer or have the content that could lead to the answer, having shared the content, others being able to experience the content, to synthesize the content, right? We can't fully read one another's minds. We can intuit feelings, we can intuit, and we can, read express micro expressions, and we can make value judgments, but we're not right 100% of the time. And we also don't know what the future brings. And we don't know what we don't know. And so we need to work together to figure out what it is that we don't know that we don't know. And that's part of the value of a group. That's part of the value of a team. And this idea of psychological safety is, according to the actual Aristotle program here at Google, um, it's team members feel safe taking risks, making mistakes, and sharing ideas without fear of embarrassment or negative repercussions. Now that seems common sense. Like, well, of course. Fear of retribution. The, what does that even mean? What could that even mean? What's the distinction between responsibility and accountability? And how often do they get confused? You have a person in a position of authority slamming on the table. We need more accountability. What does that actually mean? What does it actually mean? We need more accountability. What is accountability? When I hear that, I think we need more truth. In the absence of truth, things are unclear. Now, how can we have accountability? I guess this goes into the structure and clarity of this idea of Google psychological safety. How can we have accountability if we don't know what our aim is, if we don't know what the goal is, how can we have accountability if we don't know what our role is, what role we play among the team as it relates to the goal? How can we have accountability if we don't, if we aren't, well, I guess if we aren't, then there's a ratio, there's a percentage of how good I actually am at what it is my role entails. How good am I actually at the tasks, right? There's like, there's, there are mini or micro reflections of this concept in every task, in every role. If the concept is, what is the goal? Why is the goal? How do we get there? Between where we are and where we're going, there will be tasks, there will be obligations, there will be responsibilities. What does that even mean? Responsibilities. Our ability to respond to that given task, to that given obligation. If I don't know what my role is and I don't know what the goal is, how am I going to live up to my apps my the limits of my competence? So that's one part of the conversation, the limits of our competence. Or am I working at 10% of my competence as a consequence of the lack of clarity of the role, the lack of clarity of the goal, of the lack of buy-in, uh, right? Because then there's an engagement conversation. Or is it the other side? Is it the goal is clear, the roles are clear, the expectations are clear, but my competence is like, to the possibility for my competence to be at 99% utility. It's me as the individual participant in this business, this as the employee, the executive, the CEO. It's my incompetence. I've hit the limit of my knowledge. I've hit the limit of my understanding. I've hit the limit of my will. I've hit the limit of my mind, as Schopenhauer once said. Every man limits the vision, his vision of the world, the vision of the world for his own field of vision. Something to that effect. I can never say that quote quite fully. Every man limits the vision of the world for his own field of vision. So am I at my lid? Is it me? Is it them? Is it the company? It's a little bit of all of it. But this idea of psychological safety is, okay, psychological safety is comprised of this dependability, is one of them. The structure and clarity, the meaning, the impact. Meaning is that individual conversation, like myself, my work, myself, my team, myself, my boss, myself, the company, myself, the future of the company, myself, my future self, my current self, my future self, the hero and the adversary. Once we pass survival mode, that's where this accountability conversation comes in. Accountability. Accountability is a consequence. It's a symptom. It's like a lagging indicator. It's not the leading indicator. The leading indicator is responsibility, but responsibility has to do with the goal, has to do with the clarity, has to do with the competence, has to do with the confidence, has to do with really, weathering the storm, staying in the fight. Accountability has to do with our environment. Responsibility is the individual relating to the environment. Accountability is like, because the meaning conversation before, if we lack resources and we lack reputation and we lack opportunities and but we desire all these things, whether it's an individual or it's a team or it's a company. Well, there's a need, there's an impulse, there's a reason, right? The 3 R's of the CEO: relationships, resources, reasons. There's a reason to move into action. There's a reason to move forward. Success undermines meaning. Success undermines responsibility. Success, yeah, because accountability and responsibility have to constantly be at odds. There's a friction between the two. Like The accountability comes from nature. The accountability comes from the unknown. The responsibility is how we relate to the unknown, how we relate to nature, how we relate what's outside of our grasp, how we relate to it. Accountability isn't so. We need more accountability. We don't talk about it. We act it out. We act it out by, if we're in positions of authority, what is the goal? Why is it that? How are we getting there? Who's in charge? Who can get it done? Are we modeling the values, right? What we expect of the people, and are we making it happen? And how are we relating that verbally and non-verbally to them? This whole idea of psychological safety is like, yeah, people are afraid to speak. They can't think. I don't something though. There's an inkling of a thought that the concept of psychological safety. Actually, look up where did it come from, but the word safety is pretty intense, and the psychological safety is pretty intense. And my thought is like, is that some type of postmodern um, manifestation, or symptom of like the zeitgeist of our times? This identity construct, this identity conflict of our times, it's like seeping into business. Where did the term, because it's not that it is invaluable, but safety is very intense. Um, and all of these things are quite obvious. Where did the term psychological safety come from? The term psychological safety was first coined by clinical psychologist Carl Rogers in 1954 in the context of fostering creativity and establishing conditions where individuals feel they possess unconditional worth. Now that's exemplary of like it screams like some type of Christian undertone, some type of um, equal under God undertone. Very Petersonian actually. Well, he was a student of Carl Rogers, which is interesting. Carl Rogers introduced the concept of psychological safety as a way to describe the conditions necessary for fostering creativity and individual growth. I would say where psychological safety could get taken advantage of as a concept would be someone saying to another person, I don't feel safe around you, when they haven't done the work, necessary, right? And where does responsibility fall? Does it fall on the most aware? Well, who's the most aware? What if it's backwards, and the most aware are those lower in the dominance hierarchy, and the least aware are those highest in the dominance hierarchy? Because if the structures of, as the organization culture becomes less safe, there's less truth flowing through the pipes. There's a clog in the system. And so the higher one is, you would think they're more aware because they're higher up in the system. They may have more, they're going to have a different type of information. They should have more information or different information. But those at the bottom have information that's necessary to bridge the gap, the disconnect between the top of the pyramid and the bottom of the pyramid. And that information flow has to flow top down, bottom up, top down, bottom up. It synthesizes it. It's like a filter. It's like that filter has to work. It has to cycle. Information has to cycle. Information has to flow. And if people don't feel safe to tell their view, to share their thoughts, we have to speak to think. If we can't speak and we won't speak, either we can't speak or we won't speak, and it's a combination, then we won't think. And if we don't think, we'll lose our meaning. This is the meaning component, and we won't care about the impact. I would say that impact component of the psychological safety piece is a hugely interesting one, because it's hollow without the actual safety, the ability to speak without repercussion, but also meant like what kind of repercussion, because the more sensitive one is, the more that'll feel like a repercussion. That's where that competence piece comes in, and that's where that so the accountability is not just telling the truth and speaking our minds, it's making the tough decisions that no one else can make. It's making the layoffs It's firing the and removing the people that it's not the best place for them. They don't want it. We don't want it. The results are speaking. This is where the results are so important because the results give us a degree. They're a component of objectivity. It's not everything. All right, where the profit's down. Why is the profit down? Well, it's down because we made this investment, this investment, and this investment into the future. Oh, well, okay. We either believe in that future, or we don't. The profit's down. Why is the profit down? We have no idea. Or what do you mean? It's not down. Like that's revealing leadership that is in inept or up to something, or that's going to break down this idea of safety. Edgar Schein and Warren Bennis in the 60s, they further explored the concept in the field of management studies, that's like in our business, defining psychological safety as a group phenomenon that reduces interpersonal risk and anxiety about being accepted and worthwhile. William Kahn in the 90s, he reignited interest in the concept, focusing on how psychological safety enables personal engagement at work by allowing individuals to express themselves authentically. This thing, psychological safety naturally happens when there's a person in a position of ultimate authority and influence and power who's not a jerk, who listens, who tells the truth. I think that's a big thing. Who says what they think when they think it, and it's what they say is congruent to what they think, and their actions are respectable. It's an integrated person at the top of the hierarchy, and this is the issue. The organization growth, I think, misaligns it, disintegrates it because it there's going to be a lag. There's going to be a lag where, you know, even if it's for a second, right? There's an old commercial where the football player is saying, I don't know which football player it was, but was doing he just won the Super Bowl and he was doing the bench press and then he put it on his chest and he said, I'm gonna rest. And it was like 1 second and then went back to pressing. There's that kind of leader, and then there's the leader that takes a 7-month vacation on the yacht while they're the owner, while they're the leader, while everyone's looking to them for impact, meaning, purpose, and they're dependent upon their inspiration, their value system, their example. Google psychological safety. Look into it. Look up Edward Schein. Carl Rogers is amazing books. I could say so much more about this topic. Please share with a friend who is in a position of leadership or desires leadership, has interest in culture. And please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast and other culture content. And I'll see you next time.